Hello, Bring a Trailer. Welcome to my auction on my 1969 F-250 four-wheel drive I like to call my Harbor Blue Highboy. I spent over a year building this thing. I had a blast building it, and I am super excited to bring it to the auction here to show it to you guys. If you haven't yet, go down and check out the gallery in the bottom of the auction and check out all the photos and everything I took of this truck. I tried to document everything I did along the build and take pictures of everything I could. So there's lots of pictures to go through. Go check those out. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. But for this video, I want to overview the truck and kind of show you some stuff that's hard to convey over pictures or text. So I'm going to go over the truck here, so let's go dig into it. Well, hello everyone. Before we get into the detailed video on my Harbor Blue Highboy here, I wanted to mention I have a ton of videos on this truck in the archives of my YouTube channel. I have all those videos compiled in a playlist that you can view. I'm going to have that playlist linked into the comments on the auction as well as in the description of this video. So if you're interested in those things, click on that playlist and select whatever you want to view, be it from picking up the donor two-wheel drive truck, picking up the Highboy truck, stripping the frame, or putting it all together, rebuilding the axles, that kind of thing. You can view that in that playlist and get a ton of description, way more description than I'm going to be able to gather or tell you guys in this video here alone, because they'd just be way too long. But for now, we're going to just go a general auction overview of this truck, so let's go fill you guys in. All right, well, so on our general overview of my Harbor Blue Highboy, obviously the exterior is Harbor Blue. The white parts are Corinthian white. The grille and front bumper are actually Ford original pieces. The grill guard and rear bumper are period correct aftermarket pieces, and the wheels are new reproductions in 16x7, so a little bit wider, inch wider than the originals. I think that fits the 255/85 wheels pretty nicely. Most of the exterior pieces are Ford original, with the exception of the hood emblems here that are Ford. Those are reproductions. The old ones had some corrosion and I wasn't happy with. Same thing with the door handles on the exterior doors. Those are reproductions just because the originals had some corrosion I couldn't clean up. But the mirrors and the lenses and everything are all Ford original, except for the marker lights up front. Those are reproductions as well. But the rear marker lights and all that stuff is all Ford original. I try to keep everything that I could that was Ford original on this thing, just because that was kind of the spirit of the build, factory original. The lockout hubs are worn Lock-O-Matics. Those are new old stock. I got those. Really like the look of them. This truck originally would have had Dana hub lock front hubs. Those are kind of soft aluminum, and they kind of got tore up when people kind of grabbed them with pliers and turned them. And the same thing with the ones that came on this axle. They were kind of chewed up, and it just by the time I cleaned them up, they just weren't going to look the part. So went with these new old stock worn Lock-O-Matics, and these things are actually really neat. I didn't realize this when I put them on it, but they actually lock automatically. I know it's Lock-O-Matic, who would have thought, but they lock automatically whenever you put it in full drive. Whenever there's torque applied to the axle, the hubs actually lock, and even when they're in the free position, so you don't have to get out and turn the dial. So I thought that was really cool. You know, I know this truck's probably not ever going to see mud or anything like that, but loading it on and off the trailer, going for the paint shop and all that kind of stuff, I thought it was cool. You could just pull it back in the low range and the thing's already in full drive, and you don't spin the tire or anything pulling up on a trailer or anything like that without having to get out and lock the hubs. So that is pretty neat, and I think they look the part too. They're just kind of a cool aftermarket period correct piece on the exterior of this truck. And kind of while we're talking on paint, I kind of want to go over the paint and what I had to go through with this. It's been to two different paint shops. Unfortunately, I had some issues with the first paint shop. It was there for over a year. They did all the body work and everything on it, and then they painted the truck in stages. Unfortunately, they painted the hood and front fenders at a different time than they painted the cab and the bed. And when I was putting it together, the hood and the front fenders just didn't match. The shade of blue just wasn't correct to my eye. It was kind of a thing you couldn't really see it in pictures or video, but once you saw it in person, you could tell it was there. And then you would never. Every time you look at the truck, I could see it. So I had to get that taken care of. And there's also some issues with the paint or the clear coat. There was just some orange peel and some other issues with that I just wasn't exactly happy with. So I took it to a different paint shop. not long after I got it back, and they went ahead and took care of those issues I had for me. They went ahead and repainted the hood and the front fenders to match the rest of the truck, so that all that matches as well. And they re-cleared the whole cab because we had some issues with the clear coat on the cab. They also blended the doors with the new paint as well, so all that just matches perfectly. And once we did all that, the bed kind of stuck out as not having as nice a paint job, so we ended up redoing the whole bed as well. They repainted the bed and they redid the clear coat on the outside and the inside of the bed. So just trying to make this thing as nice as I could. And going off of that, we didn't do the underside of the truck. Originally, it was my plan to redo the underside of the truck, and as far as the red oxide primer. But once I started cleaning it and realizing how nice and original that primer is, I couldn't take it, bring it upon myself to cover up that original primer on the underside of this truck. So it does have blemishes on it. It does have pieces and spots where the primer is missing on this thing, but all of that, everything on the underside of this truck is factory Ford original. I didn't do any touch-up work on the underside of it. I was just amazed at how nice it cleaned up. So I hope you guys appreciate that, and don't knock it too hard for having some issues with the paint missing and stuff, where the tires kick up rocks and stuff like that. But all that is original. Same with the firewall. The firewall is all original Ford paint. It cleaned up really nice from everything from the drip seal on the cowl all the way down is all factory Ford paint. The paint runs, the messy seam sealer and all, that's all Ford. I left all that there just because I thought the originality was, I just couldn't cover it up. So anyway, all that's original. Same thing with the interior. The paint on the interior is all original. You know, it was just so nice. The donor truck was such a low mile example. I couldn't bring myself to take all that Ford apart, those Ford pieces and everything apart, because I'm just not going to be able to put it back together as nice as Ford is going to. So I guess I could bring you over here and show you the interior a little bit. I have tons of pictures in the gallery, obviously, but the seat, the way the seat cleaned up, this is an original Ford vinyl seat in light blue. The armrests are both original Ford. The steering wheel is original. You know, the dash pad, I did have to dye a new dash pad because those things crack horribly, but the floor mat's original as well. Even the shift boot on the transmission is original Ford piece. So the things like the firewall pad and stuff, when you get aftermarket reproductions, they just don't look and fit like the originals do, in my opinion. So I was just happy to be able to build this truck and leave an original interior in here, just because I feel like the fit and finish of the Ford original interiors are just hard to beat, especially when you know that it's original Ford. Now, unfortunately, the Highboy truck did have black interior pieces. It had a black seat, black armrest, and black dash pad and those things. So that is a step away from the original Highboy. But since this original piece was so nice with the two-wheel drive donor truck, I elected to keep that with this truck just for a step towards originality. But I thought it turned out really nice. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And I'm going to have some more footage of this truck from the underside when I have it on the lift. I'm going to have a driving video for you guys. I'm going to have a cold start for you guys. So let's move on to those aspects of the video and try to keep this thing as short as possible. And just a reminder, if you want to go into more detail on any of this stuff, I have those videos that you can go look in that playlist, and I go in a ton more detail on this truck. So trying to keep it short for you guys. So if you're thinking, why didn't you talk about that? Go check it out, playlist, and click on that video of that particular thing you're looking for, and I'll get a ton more detail. But let's go check out some other aspects of this truck. All right, quick overview of the engine compartment on this truck. There's a few things I want to point out. This engine is the original engine for the two-wheel drive donor truck, so it's not the original engine for the four-wheel drive, but it is a 360, which is what the four-wheel drive came with. This truck is a standard bore and standard crank engine. We did sleeve number 4 for it had some pitting in it from water getting in it over the years. This engine set from since 2001. I did get it running, but we had a weak cylinder number 4, and that's what led me to tear it out and tear it down. Found that rust in number 4. My machinist recommended that we sleeve that hole, and all the other cylinders spec'd out. He said they look amazing for as as old as this engine was. It was fairly low miles, but he said they all spec'd out, so we kept it standard bore. with that one sleeved cylinder. The camshaft, all lifters and everything is new. The camshaft was broke in, and the brake end oil has been changed, and I have some of that here. So just give you a look. These flat tappet camshafts are bad about wiping out a lifter if you don't break them in properly, but have some of the oil there, and gave it a look, and didn't see any issues with that at all. So I think everything is good, and of course it sounds nice, and idles perfect. But as far as the engine goes, pretty much everything has been replaced. Distributors are reman, carburetors are reman, new coil, spark plugs, wires, obviously all that stuff's new. So should all be good to go there. The vacuum hose, some things I would note is a new old stock off the Dearborn assembly line. I thought that was pretty cool to have there. The speedometer cable, you can kind of see there, that was a new old stock piece as well. Some pretty cool items there. So right here you can see the Stearman Cycle electronic power steering. So this is a add-on to the Highboy setup, so it has the original Highboy steering gear and everything. As far as the steering goes, it just kind of takes place of the steering shaft that goes in here. So it is a really nice addition to this truck. We'll touch more on that later in the driving video. Other things like the master cylinder, all the brake lines, everything's all new under here. New washer bottle because the old one was all cracked up and broken, and new hoses obviously, and seals up there on the wiper cowl, new plugs, all that stuff's new. The stuff like the starter solenoid, all that's new. Starter, alternator, new as well. So radiator, all new, and I did weld in the radiator standoffs here for the Highboy. The standard two-wheel drive core supports don't have these, so I welded this on so that it has the correct standoffs for the Highboy and the correct radiator for that as well. So that's kind of an overview of the engine here. So I think we're going to move on to the chassis next. All right, moving on from our exterior walk around to the favorite part of this truck, and that's the underside. I got it up here on the lift so we can take a good look at it. Before we get started, I want to mention that everything you see as far as the sheet metal and the cab goes, everything on the underside is factory original in its primer, red primer state. This one is actually a little bit browner than the ones I'm normally used to seeing. Normally it's kind of a red oxide, but this one's actually brown, and this is the original primer, so I guess it would be correct. And under here there's the center of the cab is in really nice shape, as you would expect, because it's all protected by the frame. But out here on the edges, it did show some wear. There is a little bit of the primer missing here, and consequently surface rust, especially back here on the cab corner here, the inner panel, where the rocks and stuff would hit it, and the primer just couldn't take that. So there is some surface rust there. Of course, no rot of any kind here, so it's still really solid. Same here with the floor brace, the inside here where a lot of rock chips and everything are going to hit it. There's a primer missing there as well, and surface rust. Moving on to the other side, more of the same. There's some overspray. Get out of the light there so you can see it better. There's some overspray there on this, and there is overspray from all the paint jobs over the years this truck had. A little bit, and see there's some right there as well that got on the primer. I did try to clean it up as best I could, but I didn't want to go through the primer, so there was overspray right here that I got off, but there on that edge I didn't get it all the way off. But over here some more of that primer missing, but just wanted to point that out, that the primer on the underside is all original. Same thing with the bed. The inside of the bed in between the frame rails is in really nice shape, and then out here on the edges where it gets a lot of rocks kicked up and stuff, it shows a little age. And in the wheel tubs and everything up in here, there's you can still see a lot of the primer, and I couldn't clean. It's hard to clean up in there, but all that is still original and in really nice shape as well. So that's kind of the sheet metal aspect of the truck. The chassis goes, everything has been repainted or redone on the chassis. As you can see in the pictures, I tried to have a lot of pictures of the chassis because I'm pretty proud of it. Spent a lot of time mainly waiting on the cab to get done with its first repaint. I spent a lot of time just going crazy with the chassis and making everything as nice and neat and as factory original as I could. Right here, this is a new old stock Ford speedometer cable. It's actually for an earlier style truck. 63 and later, 63 to 66, I think what this was supposed to go to, but the length is correct and the socket size is correct for the Dana 24, and the speedometer is correct. So I think it's like an inch different or something, or the wheelbase is an inch shorter, or I can't remember the wheelbase difference, but it's a little bit shorter, but it did actually work very well. So here's that cable right here snaking up to the front, and it goes up to the dash. So all that is really nice and correct, because it's an NOS part. The front parking brake cable is not like the original. It has a rubber sheath all the way on the cable, where the original would have like the steel braided line like this. These would be like the correct original ones. So the ones on the rear are more original. I just wanted to point that out, that front parking brake cable, I couldn't source a new old stock or an original front cable, but the parking brake does work and function. And moving on to the exhaust, I recreated a factory Y pipe. I have a couple of factory Y pipes from Highboys, but unfortunately they're all rusty and ugly. So I took this to my local exhaust shop, and he matched the bends, and then I notched it and fit it together here on the truck, and I thought it turned out really nice. So that is matching of the factory Y pipe, and then goes into a traditional style big round muffler, and then a 2.5 inch tailpipe at the back. The original factory had a 2-inch tailpipe. I just kind of went with 2.5 because we have 2.5 going in, might as well have 2.5 going out. So that would not be original, but I think it 2-inch just looks kind of small in my opinion. But use factory original exhaust hangers as well. The transfer case, I did not totally rebuild it. I inspected it. Everything looked to be fine. There's no play in the bearings. I did expect to have to replace the bearings, because a lot of times these shafts have a lot of play in them. This one was actually really tight. So didn't have any need to replace or rebuild any of it. So I didn't elect to do that. But I did, however, change out all the seals. So all the seals on the yokes are new. The seals on the selector shafts are new, and the gaskets on the bearing retainer caps are new as well. So the transfer case was not rebuilt, but it was resealed and obviously painted. The transfer case mounts, the isolators, those are new old stock Ford parts, and I wire tied the top castle nuts like the factory did, so that was keeps the studs from backing out, as well as the castle nuts. On the yokes, a lot of times the red primer type color on these is missing, but I have seen some very original trucks that still have some of that paint on the yokes, so that's why I painted the yokes that color. I think the drive shafts themselves are actually bare, but I elected to paint them just for appearance sake. As far as the color on these goes as well, this is a color that I custom match to the factory original transmissions. The MP435s a lot of times are the only ones that have the original color left on them. Even those, sometimes the paint just doesn't last. So I mixed a custom color that as close as the original as I could, and it turns out really nice. I think makes them look pretty good. And I do have the part number up here on the transmission. If you look in the gallery, you might see a Z right here on the last letter, and even here on the tag, it still has the Z right there. That is actually for the two-wheel drive transmission. This is the two-wheel drive transmission that was in the low-mile truck. So this only has 54,000 miles on it. Really nice shift and transmission, nice and tight. No problems with that. So it wasn't rebuilt as well. But I did put new seals. There's an output seal there and the gasket behind the tail shaft, because I did have to change the tail shaft out to the full drive tail shaft to accommodate the shifter up here. So that is why there's a Y on here. The full drive transmissions were Y, and that Z is for the two-wheel drive transmission, and that letter corresponds to the speedometer gear that's in the tail housing there for the speedometer on the two-wheel drives, from my experience. But on these, it's in the transfer case, obviously. Going on to the axles, new bearings on the outer ends of the axles. As far as the knuckles and the wheel bearings are all new. All brake hardware is all new. U-joints were in good shape on these, which they normally are if they're not used, because they're in a pool of oil if they're kept up, and the knuckle oil is kept up. You know, U-joints usually aren't a problem unless you're really using it hard. So they were good. I didn't change those, and the everything on the center section was all good, so I didn't change that stuff. I did, you know, pull the cover obviously and inspect it. Oil was nice, bright new. Bearings didn't have any play in them, so just put new oil in that. And obviously new wiper seals on the knuckles as well. So I did fill the knuckles back up with closed knuckle lubricant from Torque King, and you know, 80-90 gear oil in the front end. In the rear end, it was a little more complicated. This is not the original axle. The original axle was all beat up. The hangers were all broken off and everything. So this is actually out of a two-wheel drive crew cab, a 72. So if you saw on the part number, it says, does it say DO or D1? D1. So it's 71 part number. It came out of a 72 crew cab. It had the standard track lock, locking differential. It's really just a limited slip with springs and clutches, keeping the rear tires connected, and those typically wear out a lot. Where the original axle had the Dana Power Lock, which is a torque applied. When you apply torque, it kind of locks the rear end. It's not quite a locker, but it's a lot better than a just true limited slip. So whenever you drag, when there's power applied, it really locks both tires. So I installed that differential in here, the power lock unit with the 14 gears, and new bearings there, and new bearings on the outside, and new brakes as well. Everything in the brakes is new as far as drums, hardware, master cylinder, or wheel cylinders, wheel seals, all that's new in there. Obviously, new U-bolts. So new U-bolts front and rear, those kind of a safety item, so I like to always change those, especially on these old trucks. They like to get rusted and pitted. So new U-bolts all around, and obviously new brake hoses, new brake lines. Everything under here is new, or you know, known to be in good shape, especially if it wasn't a wear item. On the while we're under here, the fuel tanks, they are original to the two-wheel drive truck. There is 2 saddle tanks, and I believe they are, someone told me, around 13 gallons, I think, but don't quote me on that. I'm just going off the top of my head. That was a while ago when that was told to me. They have a bolt that goes through here up to the bed. These were completely filled with rust and dirt, and the bolts were completely seized up in there. I did get them broke free and put new bolts in them. So all that is good, and they do work. Actually, when I got this truck, the two-wheel drive truck, the in-cab tank was, the pickup was plugged up, and I actually used this tank right here to run the truck off of originally. So the valve works and the tanks work, although this one does have a little bit of, it's set with some bad or old gas in it. So you can see here the pickup, even when you get below the pickup, there's still quite a bit of gas left in here. So there is a little bit of old gas in there, but I did clean it out as best I could, and I don't think you'd have any problem running it. But it, you know, if you open the cap, it does smell like old gas in there still. But you know, I did flush it out and clean it out as best I could, and didn't get any old stuff out with it. You know, just clean water once I got all the old stuff out. But anyway, that's the fuel tanks, and the selector valve, as you can see right here. The cab mounts, this is the factory rubber for the two-wheel drive truck. It is in amazing shape. I've included some pictures of that in the gallery, so I didn't change it out. It's not cracked or sagged out like a lot of them are. So I elected to use the original rubber because it's probably better than the rubber you get in the new reproductions anyway. Seems like the rubber products are never any good. So cab mounts are all original as far as the bushings go, but they are in really nice shape. Give you a shot of the upper ones up here in the core support over there. And the color on the bottom, that's just the color that I found when I took it apart. So I went back with the original color. The leaf springs are all new. Engine is all rebuilt. We'll talk about that more when we go under the hood, but clutch is new and all that stuff is new. So everything on the chassis should be all new and ready to go. Even the bushings right here on the leaf springs, these things are a pain to replace, but they're all new. So anyway, guys, let's move on to the rest of the truck here. All right, I'll do a cold start for you today. It's not exceptionally cold here in the shop, but the engine is cold. Let's see, we'll give it a little bit of choke and give it a few pumps of gas. Always like to do that. Starts up nicely. There you can see the alternator gauge is working. Oil pressure is coming up. I did adjust the high idle cam on the choke. It needed adjustment, but I have it working here to high idle the engine when you have the choke pulled out. That's a little bit too much choke, but let's get out and listen to the engine run while it's cold. See if she'll idle down for us. Alright, so there's a nice cold start for you guys, and let's do a functions test while we're here. The horn does work. Show you that. The courtesy light there does work. That turns on when you open the door. Shut the door, it goes off. Let's do the lights. There, the dash light lights up. I have the marker lights on right now. So tail lights, both tail lights there are on. Here, both marker lights up here are on. Let's see, left blinker, here at the front. Let's do right blinker. Right blinker's on. Over there. And since we have the key on, the electric power steering does work with the engine on or off since it's electric, and the cam does work to shut the blinker off. So there, we just shut the right blinker off, and the electric power steering is active, so you can turn it here even when the engine's off. So that's pretty neat. Let's do headlights. Let's see, we have low beams on right now, so both the headlights are on. And then we hit the dimmer switch down here. The light indicates up right there, and then the high beams are on. We can do wipers. It's low, high. The blower here, low, it's real quiet, medium, high, and then all the levers here work for the heat. There's heat, defrost, off, and then your temperature slider for the valve on the heater hose. The parking brake does work, and it does hold the truck. You know, all the cables are new. The brake differential valve there is working. I did recenter the valve, and to test the circuit, it does light up when you start the truck. So I guess I could show you that here. So that lights up when you start the truck. The transfer case shifter does work. You know, all the four-wheel drive system all works. It shifts nice and easy. Right there is four-wheel drive. Right there is probably neutral. Right there's too high. And you go down to low. Right there's low. So back into neutral, and then right, that'd probably fold right there. That'd be too high. You know, obviously the transmission all works. We'll see that in the driving video. But for now, I guess that's kind of a general overview of everything in the truck. The flashers are in the glove box. You'll see in the gallery those work. The radio does not work, unfortunately. Let me turn the... if you can hear that. the speaker turns on, but it doesn't pick up no static or anything. So there is something happening there, but it unfortunately does not work. So that's just a general overview of all the features in the cab and showing you all the stuff works. So let's move on to our driving video. Alright guys, we're going to film our driving portion of my video here today. Get this thing fired up and pulled out of here. Take off in second gear. The MP435 has a really low first gear. A lot of people call it a granny low. I generally don't use first gear when I'm normally driving. Typically, if you're just wanting to go somewhere slow, or if you're on a real steep hill or something, then I might use first gear, but typically just normal driving, start out in second gear, then third and fourth. I'm already in fourth gear here at 25 miles an hour, so you know, gear pretty low. It does drive down the road here pretty good. We'll show you that when I get here on a little bit more open road. But this thing drives really nice. I'm really happy with the way the driving atmosphere turned out in this truck. It's nice and quiet, no real rattles in it to speak of. The transmission is a little, I guess, like a truck transmission, so you shouldn't expect it to be a sports car transmission, let's say. But it does a really good job, and it is a really nice shifting MP435. Sometimes they're a little clunky, but this one's really nice and tight and quiet. You know, just there's a big long throw in it, I guess. But here we're back in fourth gear on a little bit more open road. I'm going to open her up here just a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to tell how quiet it is in here. You know, sometimes the microphones aren't very good at picking this stuff up, but climbing a hill here out of Caw Lake. I just went by the dam and took some pictures. I'll probably post those in the auction at some point. Creeping up here in the speeds, we're going 50 right now, and this thing just drives and cruises comfortably. One hand on the steering wheel. You know, it's not a white knuckle driving experience by any means. I've had it up to about 60, 65, 70, but really this thing likes to cruise at about 50. It's pretty happy about 50, 55. You know, it's when you get up to 60, 65, it's just zinging the motors a little bit just because it's got those 14 gears, but it's pretty happy at about 50. And it's real nice in here driving. The electric power steering is a very nice upgrade for these trucks. The manual steering on them is probably the my least favorite part about the old Highboys. They are kind of a bear to drive around, especially in a parking lot or something, that kind of a scenario if you're trying to park your vehicle. But the electric power steering is a very nice upgrade, and I do have a dial down here. I actually have it turned down right now for highway driving. If you turn it up all the way, it gets a little bit, it's a little too easy steering. But have it turned down about halfway. It's really nice and easy to adjust, just right here and adjust it if you need to adjust that while you're driving. But up here going 55, let's get it up to 60 for you guys. There's 60, so you know, it's nice. You can have a conversation here, listen to radio. I'm going to slow down here for a corner. It slows down really nice. A lot of people think you need to add disc brakes on these old Highboys, but as long as you have good drum brakes and they're set up properly, and there's nothing wrong with them, and the power brake booster has held, these things stop. I mean, I don't have any qualms with the way it stops. I'm sure if you started towing heavy loads and pulling heavy loads, hauling heavy stuff, you might wish you had a little bit more brakes, but just for what this truck's doing, just driving around, the drum brakes work just fine. But back on the road here again. I don't really know much more I could tell you. There's the radio unfortunately doesn't work. Like I said, like it's mentioned in the listing, it does turn on. I don't know if you can hear it. You turn it on and you hear the speaker makes some noise, so there's something going on there, but you can't pick up any stations or anything. You turn the dial and nothing happens, so there's something wrong with the radio. Unfortunately, it can probably be repaired or upgraded to a digital radio, something of that nature, but it is unfortunately not working. The heater works great. I actually have it turned off right now. It's a pretty decent March day here today, so I have the heater off. Windows up, so it's kind of quiet in here for you guys to not get any window noise. I guess I could talk about the gauge cluster here. Speedometer works, and it is fairly accurate. I did test it with a GPS on my phone. I think it was within 3 or 4 miles an hour, so it's off just a little bit, but that's probably the tire size, a little bit larger tire, but it's close enough. You're not going to be breaking the speed limit in this thing most of the time anyway. So temp gauge works. It's right in the middle right now. It hasn't moved at all on me, even going nice and slow in the city. It doesn't ever get hot on me, so the cooling system is working great on it. Oil pressure gauge is a little bit over half right now. That's kind of where it's been sitting. I don't really put any weight in that. These old temperature or pressure sensors aren't very accurate, so it's got oil pressure, I guess, is that's what it's telling you. The alternator gauge does work. Majority of the time it's in the center if it's not charging, but if you do run the battery down, if you're messing with something like when I was getting all the lights working and everything, and I had the lights on for a while, if you start it up, it does move pretty far over when it's charging good, or if you turn the lights on, something like that, you can see it move. Fuel gauge works. I don't know what else I could say there. We're about below half a tank on it right now. The auxiliary fuel tanks do work as well. I have about 6 gallons in the left auxiliary fuel tank. I'm just testing the system out, making sure the valve and everything's working. But all that's working as it should. But there is unfortunately no fuel gauge for those auxiliary tanks. So that you have to. The way I would do it is if you wanted to run both tanks, you fill them both up and then you run the right one and until you run it out, and then you switch to the left one until you run it out, and then you switch to your main tank last. So you'd have the fuel gauge there for your last tank if you're on a long trip or something with this thing, on a big cruise or something of that nature. But that would be a lot of fuel for this thing. It's really getting pretty good mileage. I was wanting to get it the fuel tank kind of sucked down so I can make sure the sweep on the fuel gauge was all correct. And I've been driving. I've got looks like 95 miles on it today for this trip, and I am just below half a tank. So I think we started at about 3/4, so it's doing pretty good. I haven't checked the mileage. I might do that if I have time before the auction happens. I'm just curious what it would be. Typically what I would normally see is anywhere between 10 to 12, but I could be surprised. I've been driving this one pretty easy, so it might be getting a little bit better than that. But here we're cruising along 50 miles an hour. This thing cruises great. Drives nice and straight down the road. You can take your hand off the wheel and everything. So it is a fantastic driving truck, and couldn't be happier with the way it's turned out and it drives. A lot of people think that the two-wheel drives drive a lot nicer, and they do. But whenever you get these old Highboys all tuned up just right, they drive just as nice as well. So I hope this helps you out, guys. And I'm going to include a little bit of driving footage with this, so you can see the speedometer working and the gauges working and all that kind of stuff. But I hope this helps you guys with the driving portion of the video. I think that's the end of my video here for the auction listing. So I thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. I hope everything I mentioned here in this video helps you out. And of course, if you have any questions about the truck or the auction in general, throughout the auction, feel free to hit the contact seller button and message me directly, or mention me in the comments using @seller in the comments or @Cubic Motorsports, and I'll answer your questions as I can that way as well. So anyway, guys, I'm going to get off here, and we're going to get some a little bit more driving footage for you guys just from the view from the driver's seat, and we'll call it good. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the comments of the video. Well guys, we're here at the gas station. I thought I would do a little mileage check since I'm putting some mileage on this thing. Got just about empty on fuel, probably about an eighth of the tank, a little under eighth of the tank. So I'm going to top her off and we'll put some miles on it. Then I'll fill her back up and we'll see what kind of fuel mileage we get. Alright guys, well I got her topped off. We ended up putting 15.25 gallons in it. I guess that's not really important. We'll see that the important number will be after we do the driving and we come back and check the mileage, so I'll let you guys know. All right friends, well I'm pulling back up to the same gas pump and we're showing just under a half a tank. I will have to look at the mileage, but I think we're about 100 miles exactly. So we'll put some gas in it and we'll see how it did. All right guys, well I got her topped off. We got 10.3 gallons in it. And I did confirm we are right at 100 miles on the odometer. That is off just a little bit, so you know our numbers may be off just a little bit. I guess it would have been better to use a GPS, but topped her off. So 10 gallons and 100 miles, that's about 10 miles a gallon, which is pretty standard for a stock 2-barrel 360 in one of these old trucks with a 14 gear. So anyway guys, that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the mileage on this truck's going to be. And hope you enjoyed that little tidbit of information. Thanks.